feel. Your old identity says, well, who you are would just go eat the pizza. But with what you want, who you want to be wouldn't eat the pizza. And because you have such a history with the old pattern, it's hard to embrace that new pattern, right? So a lot of times it's being unwilling to become somebody else to get what you want. But in the moment, that's not how we see it. We see friction as a sign to give up most of the time because it gets hard. But that frictional moment is an opportunity for you to become, or for you to vote for that version of yourself that has what you're pursuing.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hair. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast.
Too many men are walking away from their goals, their health, their families, even from themselves. The weight of expectations, the silence around mental health, and the loss of identity after setbacks all play a role. Our guest today knows that struggle firsthand. Kidane Jones went from Texas A&M football and track to the Kansas City Chiefs, to becoming one of the top bodybuilders in the world, placing second at Muscle Mania 2014. Now, as a performance coach, he's dedicated to helping men push past those breaking points and find the strength to keep moving forward. But there's more to Kidane than that. Those of you that know me personally know, this year has been a major year for me, and not in the best of ways. I was overweight, I was unhealthy, and I was super depressed. And as I started to come out of that, losing that weight, getting healthy, forging new relationships, I knew that I needed someone to help guide me through that. So many of you text me, email me, call me, send me Facebook messages, and I appreciate them all. But the one message that I never know how to answer is, what's your secret? How do you do it? Because it's not a magic button. But here is one thing that is my secret, is I work with this man. So let's welcome on the podcast, Kidane Jones. Kidane, thank you for joining us.
Of course, man. I'm happy to be here.
So look, I'm pumped to have you just because, we've known each other for a little bit now. You've made a huge impact in my life in the short time we've worked together. But before we get into all that, let's find out a little more about you. So we obviously got to cover the thing everyone on the podcast wants to know. Former NFL player. What did your road to the NFL look like?
Man, so I'll do my best to make a long story short. I actually had braces on my legs until I was about 7. So I was not supposed to be an athlete at all, which made me want to be an athlete more. I grew up next to a very athletic family. They were a family of a mother that was a high level athlete. Father was a high level athlete, and they had 3 sons and a daughter. All 3 of those sons went on to play professional level basketball. One of them was my best friend, Teray Murray. Me and him are the exact same age. So I was on such the opposite end of a spectrum as a kid, like watching him interact with the world and with people and with sports. And I wanted the excitement he had. And to be honest, the attention that he got from people. Right. So that's what kind of sparked my hunger for athletics, and ended up being pretty good. Played football, ran track in college, got an opportunity to do that at the collegiate level. Played football and ran track for Texas A&M University down here in Texas, College Station, which is like an hour and a half up the road. Then I had an opportunity to play professional football for the Kansas City Chiefs, which was it was amazing. It was awesome. It was an interesting opportunity to meet myself in so many different ways, right? It didn't last very long because I had my 5th concussion, and I decided that was enough for me personally. But it was an absolute blast, man. It was an absolute blast.
That's awesome, man. And I like to circle back for a second. I did not realize you had braces on your legs, and I've watched most of your videos. Because now that is definitely not the case. Like, you are a big dude. I think one of the other coaches in the group we work with described hugging you as running into a tank. So when did you make that transition physically to becoming like a big guy?
Man, so I think because the message, or at least how I perceived the messages that I heard from doctors and from people around me when I was younger, was that I was inferior. I was weaker. I was less than, because of my legs. I couldn't perform like other kids. They were like, don't worry about it. You'll never be good at that. And what that meant to me was weaker, less than. So as a kid, the first thing you think of as the opposite of that is like a big, huge superhero. Right. So my favorite superhero for the longest was the Hulk. And it was just because there's nothing he could not do. If you made him mad enough, he could do anything. He just got stronger and stronger and stronger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what I wanted to be. So I always knew that I wanted to be a bigger guy. And I used to tell people like, man, like as soon as I'm done with track and I don't have to be fast, or as soon as I'm done with football and I have to stop being able to like move the way I do, it's like, man, I'm going to put some size on. I'm going to put some size on. So the seed was planted when I was maybe 10, 11, right? But it couldn't come into fruition until I was done playing ball.
And you became massive, right? 2014, I think second in the world, right?
Yeah. So 2014, I got second in the world in a drug tested organization. And honestly, the guy I came in second to looked like somebody drew him on a sheet of paper. Like we all went backstage and took our clothes off, and we all saw him and we were like, second place is cool. Second place is fine. Second place will work. I'm totally cool with second. But yep, that was my best finish, was second internationally. Yeah.
That's awesome. So this episode is not going to be, and for y'all that don't know our guest today, he is the most uplifting, positive person you've ever met. And we're going to try to keep it positive, but we're going to talk about some heavier stuff today, because one of your messages I think is really important. And I only stumbled across it. You and I had worked together for weeks before I found your Instagram. And with me, you're always very upbeat. Okay, like let's get it done. Let's do these things. And then I opened up your videos and there was a whole world that we just aren't talking about as men at all. And, one of the videos that caught my attention started with, why do men give up? Tell me a little bit about your philosophy on why men quit.
To make it make sense, to give it context, I believe the way we interact with the world is based on our identity. Our identity is a operating system based on beliefs, patterns, values, previous experiences that filter how we make choices and what we do, why we do it, what we see, why we see it that way. So what happens to a lot of guys is when we want something, when we're in the pursuit of something I always tell guys that I work with, whether these be professional athletes, whether they be executives or attorneys, everything is a self-development process, right? Every single thing, because you begin this process of obtaining this thing that you do not have. And by default, if you do not have it, you are not the type of person that would have it yet. So the journey you go through in trying to obtain this thing is more so becoming the person that would have this thing. And your identity at the moment doesn't match what it takes to get that thing. So when we get into situations where things get hard, things get uncomfortable, a lot of us don't have the self-awareness to realize in this moment, this is calling me to become somebody else, somebody that I'm not right now. The easiest way I can articulate that is, let's take nutrition, for example. If somebody wants to be in amazing shape, we know the identity of somebody is in amazing shape. One of the characteristics they have is that they can be consistent with their nutrition even when they don't feel like it. One of the characteristics of somebody that's not in shape yet is probably somebody that can't be consistent with their nutrition when they don't feel like it. So you get into a circumstance where it's like, okay, this is a moment where I do not want to be consistent with my nutrition, but I do want to be in shape. That's the friction you feel. Your old identity says, well, who you are would just go eat the pizza. But with what you want, who you want to be wouldn't eat the pizza. And because you have such a history with the old pattern, it's hard to embrace that new pattern, right? So a lot of times it's being unwilling to become somebody else to get what you want. But in the moment, that's not how we see it. We see friction as a sign to give up most of the time because it gets hard. But that frictional moment is an opportunity for you to become, or for you to vote for that version of yourself that has what you're pursuing.
So let's stop right there, because I think that's a great place for us to kind of hang out before it gets even heavier and we start talking about like identity crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell to like a new client or even just a guy you ran into? Because that friction, that sounds so easy, right? Don't eat the damn pizza. That sounds super easy. And maybe it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you tell people? Like, what do they need to tell themselves? What's the thought process? Like, what should be their mantra when they're trying to make a change, whether it's nutrition
Mm-hmm.
or whether it's putting in that extra 2 hours a day at work,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it's making their daughter's, bath time every night because that's the most important thing. But they're competing with work. What do they need to be telling themselves to get over that besides just make the change?
That's a great question. So one of the things I think is the most damaging thing you can do to people is say, stop doing this. If somebody comes to you for help in a genre, like me as a mental performance coach, people come to me because they have habits that they know are bad, that they don't want to partake in, that they do want to change. If I say, don't do that, they know that they shouldn't do it. They don't want to do it. Right. Or at least after the moment, they don't want to do it. So what I do a lot of times is give them a understanding of behavior, right? Or at least of habits and decision making. And then the goal isn't to go from 0 to 100. It's to make that decision a little bit different. But to make that decision a little bit different, you have to understand how behavior works. Behavior works in 3 steps, right? That first step is a cue. The second step is the behavior that we are trying to change. The third step is the reward that you get from that behavior. And the reward is the most important part. That's what drives the whole behavior. For example, nutrition. Well, I'll use a different one. I was just working with a very successful guy, and the problem he was having as a married man was looking at other women. Right? He wouldn't approach them. He wouldn't exchange numbers, but he would only do it when he was with his wife. Right? And so another part of the habits we have is trying to figure out what they're trying to accomplish for us, which is part of that reward. There are 6 foundational human needs that our body is trying to fight for at all times. And because him specifically, he felt like he wasn't getting love and connection, which is a real big one for us, from his wife, this would cause him to look at these women, which would elicit a response from his wife, who he doesn't get attention from. Now he gets a lot of attention from her, right? So even though it's not the way he wants it to, he gets that attention, which fulfills that connection and love. So the first thing I would say is understand what loop you're in. Get to the reward. If we can figure out what the reward is, we can start to reroute your behavior to something more in alignment with what you want that gives you a similar reward. So it's not be perfect. It's not stop staring at the women. It's not don't eat the pizza. It's not work harder, grind harder. It's what reward are we trying to satisfy here? And how can we bend it in a different direction just a little bit right now?
And that's right. I mean, that's consistent with my experience with you. You've never said, do more workouts. You've never said, stop eating junk. Like, I mean, it's been heavily implied a couple of times, but but instead you've been like, what is the goal? Where are we going? When you take your girl, like one of your questions to me was, when you take your girlfriend to Napa, what is your plan? What do you want to do? Are you just trying to go have fun? Or are you trying to kind of stay on the track? Tell me what I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the reward just drinking a bunch of wine, or is the reward that you come back and you're still a step closer to your goal?
Right.
That makes sense. All right, so let's take it further. Another thing you talk about, and I think this is just kind of a step in that process, is the stress on men between our identity, or at least what's expected of us, and how that results in kind of additional failure and additional quitting. And I mean, so powerful. I mean, you gave... If you don't, I mean, I guess you don't mind me sharing because you put it on Instagram. But you gave an example of, at some point you were at a point in your life where you would just go to the gym late at night and you would just put weight, more weight than I've even seen in my life, on a bar and just deadlift it. It wasn't because you were trying to get stronger. It was you were actually doing something to yourself. which
Yeah.
I think someone would argue is not healthy, right?
No.
I guess healthiest way to hurt yourself is by getting stronger, but it wasn't healthy. But talk to me about what leads to that moment, not just with you, but with all of us as guys.
I think what leads a lot of us to that moment is not knowing what we want and pursuing things that we don't want. One of the things you talk about is the difference between who we are as men and our identity. And the goal is for those two things to not be separate. But for so many men, they're so separate, right? And when you pursue things you do not want, it creates this perpetual dissatisfaction with everything. Because no matter how good it goes, no matter how successful it is, if you do not want it, it won't satisfy you. And just like pursuing something you don't want will make you feel not very good, not pursuing anything at all will also make you feel terrible. And that's the place where I was at, was I didn't know. I was done with professional sports. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I wanted, because my vehicle for growth, contribution, novelty was gone, which for me was professional football. Now that I didn't have that, I wasn't pouring myself into something, right? I wasn't growing. I wasn't learning. And I felt what I would call a figurative decay, which is what a lot of guys feel. Now, my situation was an extreme form of it, but I feel like even most successful men, a lot of the guys that I deal with from a mental performance standpoint are either former professional athletes or men that are at the top of their game right now that are self-sabotaging themselves because they don't know what they want, or they're not actually pursuing anything anymore. Right. And this is completely my bias. I think our purpose in life is to pursue our own potential. And that is a never ending process, right? That is why when you get the thing, it's only cool for a second. Everybody talks about the good old days when I was hustling and chasing the thing and learning the stuff and shaking the hands and meeting the people. Those are the parts where we come most alive. That's when dopamine is actually secreted the most during the pursuit. You don't get a dopamine secretion when you win first place, or when you get the trophy, or when you get the check, or when you get the deal. So when we stop pursuing these things, you don't get a dopamine surge, or you try to get it from other places, or you try to numb out that icky feeling of not doing anything, and you just don't feel good. You feel unsatisfied about everything. Depressed is probably a better way to put it.
And I think we just don't, I don't know why. I mean, I guess why do you think that we're not encouraged to talk about that? I mean, I can't think of a time that I've been sitting with a random guy, not random, but even just a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And, I've been like, how's it going? And the response has been, I think I'm really depressed. Like, we don't talk about that. But
no, we don't.
I have been with women who will open up about their emotional state with me, like from the jump, and mm-hmm. then we can kind of talk about, okay, here's where you're at. What do you need from me? Why do you think we don't do that?
I think society has put a pressure on men to give a perception of strength. And I think if we leaned into what strength actually means, it would be healthy for us. But we perceive strength as nothing is wrong with us ever. Everything is always okay. Right. And we want to be seen as pursuing, as building, even if we're not actually. Right. We want to be seen this way. And I think the question a lot of men have is, if I tell you I'm not okay, what are you going to do about it? You're going to tell me, oh, dude, everything will be fine. Right. So for a lot of men, I think it's fear. It's fear of the perception that will create. If I tell you I feel like I might be depressed, will you look at me as less of a man? Will you look at me as weak? Right. And then there's I want to tell my friends, but what are they going to do? Like, not that you don't love your friends and that you don't think they have great intentions, but I think a lot of guys that I've talked to, when I ask that question, well, have you ever talked to your friends about helping you? And their question is, well, what can they do about it? They're just going to tell me everything is going to be okay. And that's not what I need to hear. That's not going to help me.
Yeah. And that's not empathy, right? Like saying, like, the worst thing you can say to someone is at least or but, right? like if I tell you, hey, I'm really depressed and I'm going through things, I don't want to hear, well, I mean, at least you have a good job, right? I'm like, yeah, but I just opened up to you and you shut me down.
You
And
just completely threw my feelings out the window.
that's exactly it. You took my feelings, you threw them aside. And I think as society, that's what we do to men, right? That's just what we do, like as a society, not even intentionally. I don't think when I'm talking to someone that they are thinking about shutting me down. I think we're just like, okay, we're guys, so we're tough. So, we're not gonna, like, this is not how it's gonna play out. Like, we're not gonna have that discussion, and we're gonna keep things on the up and up. But I don't think I don't think that's doing anyone a service, especially not a guy who's your friend that you care about, that you want to see succeed.
I would 100% agree. And I would even take it a step further and say the friend on the other end is probably equally as uncomfortable with having the conversation because he doesn't know what to offer. Right? If a guy comes to his friend and he says, I genuinely care how my friend feels. But when he tells me he's depressed and he's going through this thing, I genuinely don't know what to tell him. I don't know how to have that conversation because as a man, none of us, I'll say most of us don't have these conversations and we don't know what perspective to come from. We don't know how to offer valuable insight or even maybe even just an ear to vent to. A lot of the times we don't know how to communicate in that manner the way women do.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no real fix to it, right? Because like society's done it. We can't go in and change society as much as we might want to. So let's kind of use that to transition in the few minutes we have left, because this has been like a very male centric conversation, which makes sense. And our industry my industry is dominated with men. A lot of industries are. That's okay. But there's also, I think women play a central role in this too, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have a wife, a girlfriend, whatever, it's important that they understand where you're coming from. And I think this conversation's been helpful. But I guess, like, look, you've got a brand new baby on the way. By the time this airs, you will have a brand new baby on the way. Your first one,
first little girl.
Congratulations. Yeah. And what do you think? Like, I know you're starting to think about these things, and I know your outlook as a man has changed, knowing you are now responsible for the growth of what's going to one day be a lovely woman.
A human, yeah.
What do you want? What do you think men need to be doing better in terms of communicating with women about this? And what do you think women need to be doing better in terms of getting their man to be able to communicate in a way that he can be that person he wants to be?
I think that's an awesome question. And me and my fiance were just talking about this. One of the places I've had to do the most growth so that I could be healthy from a mental standpoint in myself is being able to articulate honestly and openly how I feel. Right. And this seems like a very small example, but I swear it's gone miles for me. I caught my place. I caught myself in a resentment was what I was feeling. And it was because whenever my fiance told me to do something, I would just say, yep. Whether I felt like it or not, no matter how my day was, no matter what I was going to do, I would just say, yep, and get it done. And the switch I made wasn't say, you didn't ask me how my day was. I'm da 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 da. What I started saying was, well, no, I don't feel like doing it. I'll do it if you want me to, maybe just not right now. And what that did for me was offer just a little bit more honesty and give her a different perspective. Because now she's like, oh, he doesn't feel like doing the 1,000 things I tell him to do all the time. So maybe I should ask him differently. Right. So just even the way we word things has such a huge effect on how they're perceived by your own self and by who you're communicating with. So what I would offer is for men to be more honest, even in the small stuff. You can start there. When she says, go take the trash out, if that's how she words it, you can say, I really don't feel like doing it right now, but I'll definitely do it when I have some free time. Right. And the goal isn't like, I don't want it to turn into this power struggle thing. The goal is for me to be honest with how I feel right now. And I should be able to be honest with you, and you should be able to hear that, and it starts with small things like that. That's what helped me out the most. And I think from a women's perspective, I think they ask questions in a way that they would communicate with a woman. I think understanding in men that in general that men don't want to open up, right? So maybe come at it from a different angle. How do you feel? Probably won't get much from a man. Versus, did you feel frustrated at any point today during work? I did. He'll be like, oh, hell yeah. Right. And then the stories come out. Did you feel sad at any point in the day? And it can start with small stuff like that. And you can even start with the more masculine emotions, like, were you frustrated today? And he'll be like, absolutely. I had this meeting with this guy and did it. You know what I mean? So women's perspective is thinking about how you articulate what you want a little differently. Men being willing to take that first step into the water and be a little more transparent, even if it's on a small scale.
And that's awesome, because I think that's what we can agree is like, look, everyone quits sometimes, and sometimes quitting is a good thing.
Sometimes
right?
it is. Yes.
You getting ready to hatch a terrorist plot? I want you to quit. Right? But you know what I don't want, and what I hate seeing, and having gone through it myself as well, is I don't want to see someone quit on a relationship or a family.
100%.
If all they have to do are make these little changes in their life, and it's so funny because you coming from kind of mindset coaching, but also nutrition coaching and also fitness coaching, like you've seen the gambit of all of this. So before we get to our final question, if you were going to leave, men or women listening with like your one biggest takeaway piece of advice, what would it be?
The biggest takeaway advice I would say is, and it sounds so generic, is cultivate self-awareness. And when I say that, everybody's like, oh, I am self-aware. But the immediate reaction that you think you're self-aware is probably evidence that you're not. I think there's a statistic that 80-something% of people are not actually self-aware, right? So I would say cultivate some awareness of yourself. And when you can better govern yourself and you can see yourself a little bit more unbiasedly, that gives you then agency to see other people differently, which does help.
That is awesome. All right, Kidane, my friend, my mentor, before you go, I do have to ask you, what does it mean to you to level up?
Man, so I have this concept called hunting that I used on myself, and it revitalized my life and the men I work with. It's revitalized their lives. To me, leveling up just means looking for a new level of potential from yourself, looking at new possibilities, new identities for yourself, whether that be external things you do or internal changes you make. Again, I said this earlier, I think the purpose of life is to pursue your own potential. And when you think about hunting, I don't want you to think about the weapons or the grueling part. I want you to think about how excited a lion is to chase a gazelle. It's not angry, right? It's excited. It's focused. It's tenacious. It's hungry. It's driven. I think that's how we should pursue our own potential. So to me, leveling up is being on that journey continuously and being excited about it, whatever that means for that individual.
That's beautiful, man. Look, I am so thankful for you, not just for your time today, but for everything you've done for me. It's been an honor to get to work with you.
Oh man, it's a blast. We're just getting started, man.
Amen. I'd like to thank Kidane Jones for joining us on the podcast. As I mentioned, he's been really instrumental in helping me grow. And what he says is so true. The reason we quit is often that we just don't like who we have to become in order to get our goals. But one of the things we can do is keep those goals in mind and really put in that work. Again, if we really take care of each other and ourselves more, the sky's the limit as far as potential.
Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player.